What's up, everybody? Matt Gajewski here, back again talking college basketball. And today we are talking the Friday first round of the NCAA tournament. Before we get started, a couple things. First of all, it's very early on a Thursday morning. We're recording this, and there's a pretty nasty storm going on. If you hear some weird stuff, my mic is very sensitive. Second, thank you to anyone who supported the channel. We have a lot of new subscribers. We're approaching 1,000, still a little bit over 200 to get there. That's the best way to help a small channel like this, liking the video, subscribing, leaving a comment. So thank you if you've done that. It's not lost on me that you're spending some time with me out of your day, and it means a lot. Let's dive right in. We have a lot of games. Baylor takes on Mississippi State. This game, 1 point spread in favor of Mississippi State, a 144 total. The only major injury in the game is Josh Ojianwuna for Baylor. He's their center. He's been out for a while, so this is not new. Resume-wise, Baylor is 29th in the country. Power rankings, when I reference their rankings, it'll always be power rankings. They went 2-10 against the top 25, beat St. John's in non-con, and then beat Kansas. And then they lost a lot to really good teams, but then they also lost 3 times to teams outside the top 50, to TCU, Colorado, and Cincinnati. All of those are concerning. And they're a flawed roster. It is what it is. Mississippi State has a lot of the same concerns. They're 32nd in the country, 1-8 against the top 25 with that lone win coming against Texas A&M. They also have 3 wins or 3 losses at 40 or lower: Butler, Texas, and Arkansas. However, there's a little bit of nuance here. They did knock off Ole Miss twice, who ranks 26th. So if Ole Miss maybe gets one more win in the country, we're talking about Mississippi State being 3-8 rather than 1-8 against the top 25. But it is what it is with them as well. A lot of losses to the high-end teams, a couple losses to lower-end teams, but mostly taking care of business against who they're supposed to. And that's how you end up in an 8-9 game. As far as stylistics, Mississippi State is 138th in effective height, 99th in rebounding. Baylor is 273rd in effective height, but 100th in rebounding. That's been trending down since they lost their center. Now they've been forced to play Norchad Omier at the 5. He's only 6'7", and he's unique. He's been playing this position for a while. He did it with Miami. Amazing rebounder, ranks nationally, but he's always coming in undersized, so it limits what Baylor can do. As far as the shooting stuff, Mississippi State is 124th in effective field goal percentage, 44th inside, 295th from 3. They shoot too many threes. It's just the way it is. They're at 95th in three-point rate. And their best three-point shooter is Josh Hubbard, their point guard, who's undersized at 34%. Now, Baylor's defense is lacking. They'll let you shoot threes. They rank 275th in three-point defense. They're also 128th inside. So there are openings for Mississippi State to maybe have some better performances shooting the ball. It just hasn't been their calling card this year, and they've been really trying to force it down people's throats, and it hasn't worked. As far as Baylor, this team is better offensively than Mississippi State, but of course they lag on defense. Shooting-wise for Baylor, they're 58th in effective field goal, 169th inside, 125th from 3. But this team has not trended in the right direction since conference play. And you know what? There is some nuance here because VJ Edgecombe, their stud freshman, had like a red-hot January. But since then, everything's cooled off. If you look at what's happened since January 1st, they're down to 205 in three-point percentage. Edgecombe has fallen into the mid-30s. It's really only Jaden Nunn at 41%, who's higher than 35%. Everyone's at that mark or lower other than Jaden Nunn. Mississippi State is 50th in total defense, 145th inside, 313th defending the 3. So they will let you shoot threes. It's just that these are 2 lackluster three-point shooting teams against awful three-point defenses. So what wins out in a situation like this? I think some of the best matchups in the game are going to be Cam Matthews versus Norchad Omier inside. Matthews is an elite defender, and Norchad Omier is as good as they come efficiency-wise, both offensively and defensively, and on the glass, honestly. Turnover margin does narrowly favor Mississippi State, but there aren't many peripheral edges in this game. If it comes down to fouls, Baylor's 96th at free throw shooting. Mississippi State is 262nd. One edge you could potentially poke, I guess, hole you could poke in Baylor is the Big 12, is just weaker than the SEC. Mississippi State, while they've lost a lot of them, has had more opportunities than Baylor. Not by a lot, but it is the case. And with the injury to their center, we make this about -1 and some change for Mississippi State. That puts it right on the lean line for us. I don't think we'll take this game because I don't think we'll see a lot of line movement, but it is possible, and one will wait and see. Actually, you know what? Somehow messed up the graphic. I have an over in this game. At 140, what is the number I have? 144? So yeah, this is something I think you can play towards the over. I forgot I took this right before the show. This is what happens when you play at, it's 4:57 a.m. Central Time right now. I'm recording this. So the lean in the game is officially Mississippi State minus the 1. The play, the unofficial play that should be on the screen and isn't, is the over in this game. And that's stemming largely from defense. And Mississippi State's pace is decent at 133rd. They're well above average. Baylor is slow, but some decent value towards the over. According to our projections, we make this closer to 146. Next up, Robert Morris takes on Alabama in the 15-2 matchup. This game has a spread of 23 and moving upwards towards Bama, of course. Totals 165.5. Only injuries in the game come on the Bama side. Latrell Wrightsell has been out for most of the year. And Grant Nelson continues to be a question mark, not just for this game, but for the tournament at large. We'll see what happens with him. Stylistically, resume first. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Robert Morris ranks 139th. They went 9-3 against the top 200. Not many opportunities up top. Best win is over Cornell at 128. They only played one team in the top 100 all season. They got blown out by 28 points against West Virginia. And they have losses outside the top 200 5 times. The worst one came to number 337, Detroit Mercy. Just a Horizon League roster. Alabama at 6th overall went 6-7 against the top 25, beat Kentucky 3 times, Auburn, Texas A&M, and Houston. They have 2 losses that I think you could maybe poke a hole in if you were really putting this team under the microscope. Oregon at 31, Ole Miss 26. Otherwise, their only losses have come to the elite teams in the country. It's a very good body of work for Alabama, who schedules rigorously in non-conference. So it's not just you cut your teeth on the SEC every single night, but you also did it in November, where a lot of teams were playing Duquesne and, frankly, Detroit Mercy. Stylistically, Robert Morris is 234th in effective height, 38th in rebounding. That's basically just a Horizon stat. They're pretty good in that conference on the glass, really only trailing UW-Milwaukee. But Alabama's 5th in effective height and 21st in rebounding. And even if you remove Grant Nelson from the floor, you still have Diabate and Amori and Darion Reed when he's playing and Stevenson. The front court is so deep for Alabama, full of players approaching 7 feet tall. You're just not going to win on the glass as a Horizon League team against a team like Alabama when you are seeding over 200 rankings in size. And their best player, Alvaro Fulgaris, at 6'9", plays the center position. He's going to have to battle against Cliff Amori inside, who's one of the best rim protectors in the SEC. Very limited offensively, but man, I'm a little nervous for Fulgaris, as good as he was in the Horizon League. We'll see how it translates to Amori and the studs that are in the Alabama front court. Shooting-wise, Alabama's 11th in effective field goal, 3rd in two-point percent, 103 in three-point percent. But even that three-point mark has jumped up significantly. They're in the top 50 since conference play started. Aiden Holloway is shooting 40%. Chris Youngblood nearly 39%. Mark Sears, not the best marks on the year, but he's at 36% in conference, which is solid enough. Robert Morris is 145th in total defense, 205th defending the 3, 128th inside. Alabama should meet no resistance with their breakneck pace. This is the fastest team in the country. Robert Morris is 144th in effective field goal, 190th in two-point percent, 117th from 3. Fulgaris is the best player in this conference, player of the year. He shoots 43% at 6'9", but then what are you getting outside of him? There are some three-point shooters that are decent. DJ Smith, Ryan Prather, and Josh Omojafo are hitting at least 38% of their threes. So I think the best path is probably trying to shoot over the top of Bama. It's much easier said than done. They have great guard defense, 17th on the perimeter, defending that area, 26th overall. They're actually 81st inside. To me, that's just a stat when they bring in some of their defenders, like Mo Diabate and stuff. You're sacrificing rim protection for better offense. But when Omori's in, I have no issues with their defense inside. This is an elite team. As far as the periphery, Alabama doesn't force a lot of turnovers. They're 347th. But Robert Morris will just give you some. They're 271st in turnovers committed. So at this level of competition, does Alabama just walk into more turnovers? And level of competition gap is at least worth mentioning there. Both teams generate a lot of fouls, but Alabama just so much deeper. If Fulgaris fouls or something like that, Robert Morris is getting cooked and they're not covering this game. So that's an interesting matchup to watch in the front court. Alabama's first in tempo. Robert Morris is 138th. This is very dangerous for Robert Morris. The best path for them would be slowing this game down, leading to volatility and decreasing the possessions. That's not what they do. The biggest question for Bama is Grant Nelson. It's more of a long-term question than it is for this game. We make this pretty close to the spread, but I think stylistically, you're just taking Bama in a game like this with the pace on both sides. If you want to take the game, I know there's some of you that bet every tournament game. So the lean will be Alabama. There's a very good chance I step into this game as well. I'm not sure what it'll do. We actually make it inside the spread, but I'm still taking Alabama if forced to pick a side. Next up, Lipscomb takes on Iowa State. It's a 15-point spread in favor of Iowa State, a 143 total. Only injuries in the game come on the Iowa State side. They've had a lot of them this year. Momcilovic missed a month. He's back now. Timmy Lipsey missed a few games. He's been gutting it out all season long. He won't be healthy in these games, but he's still going to play. And worst of all, Keyshawn Gilbert, who was battling an injury for a while, tried to return in the Big 12 tournament, couldn't stay on the floor, had to shut it down. He's out for the rest of the year. So that's a big loss for Iowa State. And they had 6 legitimate contributors. Now you're bringing your rotation down to 5.5 if you want to include Heisey. So it's a tough situation for them in the most important part of the year. Lipscomb's 83rd overall. They went 7-8 against the top 200. Only 2 of these games were against decent competition, Arkansas and Kentucky. Both of them were double-digit losses. Their best win came against North Alabama. They beat them twice. Chattanooga as well. Those are 111 and 110 in power rankings. They lost outside the top 200 just once, and that was to Queens, who I think was a little bit underrated in power rankings at the end of the season. Queens gave Lipscomb a really good game in their conference tournament as well. Almost won. That game went to OT. Iowa State, they're 10th overall. They went 3-6 against the top 25, which is an accomplishment considering how many injuries they had. They beat Arizona, Texas Tech, and Kansas. And honestly, they should have another win in the top 25. If it weren't for a Caleb Love half-court shot to force OT, they would have that. But their losses outside the top 50 came to West Virginia, Kansas State, and Oklahoma. None of those games was Iowa State at full strength. Stylistically, they are 52nd in effective height, 51st in rebounding. Lipscomb is 103 in effective height, 151 in rebounding. Lipscomb, it's more of a stylistic choice. I think they could rank higher if they ever attack the offensive glass, but they're 38th defensively, 330th offensively. They're just trying not to get cooked in transition. Some teams just do this. Shooting-wise, Iowa State is 50th in effective field goal percent, 46 from 2, 68th from 3. Those numbers have been climbing since Milan Momcilovic returned. He's a 41% three-point shooter. And then Curtis Jones and Nate Heisey are both at 37% as well. So honestly, your offense doesn't really experience a large drop-off with Keyshawn Gilbert off the floor. The only place I think it might is just his ability to facilitate the offense at times. He has a team-high assist rate. So maybe the offense just looks a little different. But honestly, Tim and Lipsey is the main point guard. And he has been for years. I'm not sure this is going to be a huge factor, but we'll see. I think Gilbert's loss is really going to come on defense. But before we get there, can Iowa State score against Lipscomb? I think the answer is definitively yes. They're 124th in total D, 133rd inside, 35th defending the 3. Iowa State can score literally across the floor, so I think they have a pick-your-poison situation. Or I guess not really that. It's not pick your poison. It's a kind of pick where they want to score. On offense, how Lipscomb wins this game is just from outlier shooting. And it's maybe not even outlier because this team could really put up some points. 23rd in effective field goal percentage, 21st inside, 43rd in three-point percentage. And they shoot the 25th most threes in the country. Iowa State is 8th in overall defense, but if you were picking a hole, it is their three-point D. They rank 128th overall. So it's not an opening necessarily, but it's at least a door cracked for Lipscomb to shoot the ball over the top. And Lipscomb has a weird roster. Jake Ognesevich from Sheboygan, Wisconsin. My boy, Wisconsin boy. I always got to shout him out. He's 6'8", and he shoots 41% from three. So that helps your floor spacing. This is a very unique roster composition for a mid-major team. They also have Joe Anderson and Gyasi Paul hitting 42 and 39% of their threes. So multiple options as well. In the periphery, I don't think turnovers are going to be a huge issue in the game. Lipscomb doesn't turn it over at all, but that's against lower level of competition. Iowa's 14th in turnovers forced. That probably has some factor in the game. But otherwise, Iowa State can get careless with the ball at times. Maybe it goes right back to Lipscomb that way. I don't think it'll be a big factor in the game, but level of competition is always worth mentioning in these games. As far as projected score, we have Iowa State at 78 points and Lipscomb at 65.1. I'll say this, I'm frankly a little surprised that the Keyshawn Gilbert stuff is not being factored into the game more. But that doesn't mean what you have to look at with these things is what's the drop off? Like going to Heisey and Curtis Jones, is that a significant drop off? And I can see the case being made for flat out just no. Those are elite players. But at the end of the day, you do lose an important piece of your rotation. So I think it should be worth something. Lipscomb plus 15 is where I lean right now. It has been moving the opposite direction. So just no real incentive to play this until tip off. If you get like a 15 or a 16, 15 and a half or a 16, I'll likely fire, but we will see as the day goes on. And if you're watching the show and wondering why there's no definitive bets outside the over in the Baylor game, this just the way the show shook out, they're sort of backloaded. There's a lot coming down the pipe. Next up, Colorado State, Memphis. This game is a 2-point spread in favor of Colorado State, 147 total. The reason Memphis isn't favored is Tyrese Hunter got injured. He's doubtful to play in this game and likely out for the duration of the tournament as long as Memphis stays in it. That's not confirmed, so just make sure you double check before the game actually starts. If he plays for whatever wild reason, Memphis is an auto smash. And people are treating it like that even without him. Colorado State is 42nd overall, 4-5 against the top 50. Beating Boise State 3 times and San Diego State. That's an immediate concern for me. All of their best wins are in conference, and this is a very weak conference. Has been for the last 2 years. They all got murdered in the NCAA tournament last year. And our first piece of evidence was San Diego State getting demolished by North Carolina. Colorado State has a pair of losses outside the top 100. They lost to UC Riverside at 145 and Washington at 109. Memphis is at 51st overall. They went 3-1 against the top 25, beat Missouri, Michigan, and Clemson. They also lost to Auburn by 14, which is respectable. Mississippi State by 13, maybe not so much. But then they have 3 bad losses. This is what drives them down. 91st ranked Arkansas State, 171 Temple, 135 Wichita State. With that said, the committee didn't care and still gave Memphis a 5 seed. Memphis is 179th in effective height, 79th in rebounding. Colorado State is 238th in effective height, 67th in rebounding. Memphis is weird. This is one of the weirdest things I've seen doing these games. Memphis is 53rd in offensive rebounding, 288th defensively. How do you let teams attack the offensive glass at such a high rate if you're Memphis? Memphis is the actual opposite. They only attack the offensive glass, and they're a terrible defensive rebounding team. So, I mean, there is a path for both teams to have success on the boards, but Dane Danger is the best big man, maybe that Colorado State will have faced the entire year. So I'm certainly not giving the advantage to Colorado State in this matchup. Shooting-wise, Memphis is 55th in effective field goal, 125th in two-point percent, 10th in three-point percent. My biggest concern here is Tyrese Hunter's a 40% three-point shooter. Now we just have PJ Haggerty at 38%. There's more than just shooting for Hunter. He is the main point guard, so his loss is not just notice with the shooting, but like offensive facilitation, I think, is now a concern. We've a one-game sample without him. They moved Baraka Okogie into the starting lineup. He played 28 cowardly minutes while he was out there. He took one shot, fouled 4 times, and committed 4 turnovers in his 28 minutes in the AAC championship. I mean, the big lights were on. That's a tough game to step in. But I mean, if you're Memphis, just play Haggerty at point guard. We could get Carter on the floor. We don't need Okogie. Maybe this is a one-game overreaction, but man, he looked bad in his first game out there. That's at least worth noting. It's a data point. Colorado State is 55th in total defense, 56th inside, 128th defending the three. They're also 212th in turnovers forced. Maybe they'll coax Memphis into more turnovers because Memphis is already 308th in turnovers committed with Hunter on the floor. And Okogie turned it over 4 times immediately in his first game. So I guess that's a path. But, man, I'm not betting against Memphis offensively against a mid-Colorado State defense that you could poke holes in even further. On the Colorado State offense, this is where I think they might win the game. 24th in effective field goal, 20th at 2-point percent, 60th in 3-point percent. They have 3 elite 3-point shooters. Kyan Evans at 43%, Neat Clifford at 40%, Jalen Crocker-Johnson at 39%, and he's a very tall individual who spaces the floor. Memphis is mid on defense too, a little better than Colorado State. They're 48th overall, 88th inside, 98th in the perimeter, but definitely not shut down. This team will force a lot of turnovers as well, though. They are 68th in turnovers forced. Colorado State is 201st in turnovers committed. So this actually favors Memphis in the turnover game. Memphis might be a little more reckless with the ball, but they definitely force more turnovers, and the gap between the teams is wider in favor of Memphis. Both teams do foul a lot. Both teams also generate a lot of fouls. Neither team is particularly deep, but when they get to the line, Memphis is 244th in free throw percentage. Colorado State is 28th overall in free throw percentage, that is. This game is the pretzel extravaganza because I try not to bet against Penny Hardaway or bet for Penny Hardaway unless there's multiple points of value in a game because he is so volatile against the spread. And I also am trying to just not bet a lot of Mountain West teams. Between the two, I would rather take Memphis at a +2. Unfortunately, I had this very same thought on open, and my cowardly thoughts led me away from Memphis right away. So I missed the +3.5 that was out there, kicking myself a little bit for not taking it. But there's a very good chance we end up on this game. I'm debating Memphis right now in just a micro sell of the entire Mountain West. And we will see if this comes in later in the day. The one I have real interest in betting and haven't yet is this upcoming game. Vanderbilt takes on St. Mary's. This game is a 4.5-point spread, a 135.5 total. Only injury in the game is Grant Huffman. And resumes. Vanderbilt is 49th overall. They're 4-5 against the top 25. Beat Tennessee by a point on their home floor. Beat Kentucky, beat Texas A&M, and beat Missouri. They have one loss outside the top 50, and it was to Drake, who's in the field, 58th overall. St. Mary's is 22nd overall. They went 2-1 against the top 25. All 3 of those results came against Gonzaga at number 9. Their second best win is over number 54, Nebraska. St. Mary's does have 4 questionable losses as well. They dropped games to number 70, Arizona State, 50, Boise State, 52, Utah State, 65, San Francisco. Not the best resume, at least for a team seeded this high. However, in this game, the stylistics are just so far in their favor. St. Mary's is 44th in effective height, 1st in rebounding. Vanderbilt is 316th in effective height, 169th in rebounding. This is your shortest SEC team, playing the best rebounding team in the country. St. Mary's doesn't shoot the ball all that well. They're 172nd in effective field goal, but they can score at the rim. They're 145th there. That's not terrible. They don't shoot threes well. They're 232nd. Their only good 3-point shooter is Mikey Lewis at 39%. But Vanderbilt is going to let you score. This team somehow is 85th in total defense, a lot of that just being via turnovers. But they're 205th inside, 337th from 3 defensively. This team is hemorrhaging points. And then Vanderbilt, 130th in effective field goal percent. That's not that much better than St. Mary's. 85th in interior scoring, 237 from the 3. They're honestly worse at shooting threes than St. Mary's and a little better scoring inside. Unfortunately for them, they're facing St. Mary's, who ranks 9th overall in total defense, 14th inside, and 44th in the perimeter. The rim protection here is elite. How does Vandy score? It's probably just outlier 3-point percentage. Tyler Nickel does it 40%, but then Jason Edwards is the second best at 36%. Vandy's going to have problems scoring in this game. Neither team turns it over a lot, but foul margin significantly favors St. Mary's. Vanderbilt does have depth. They're 43rd in bench minutes. But man, pace is a big problem for Vandy, who plays very fast. They're 60th overall. St. Mary's is going to bring this down, 359th in pace. They play like the exact style of basketball Vanderbilt tries to avoid. They're slow, they're huge, they're physical. Vanderbilt is fast, small, tries to shoot. Competition is the biggest thing working in Vandy's hand, playing in the SEC. But this is about as bad of a stylistic matchup as you could draw up for Vandy. I'm going to play St. Mary's in one way or another. I'm not sure if this is going to be on a team total or on a spread. It was 3.5 yesterday. I just hesitated for a moment, thinking perhaps the SEC team takes money. It turns out it went the other way, and now we lost a point in value. But I don't see this rushing out to 5. I'll play the 4.5 if I have to, waiting to see if we get some buyback on Vandy throughout the day. But this one will be on the card in some form or another. I will play it in Discord when the number gets to an appropriate area or just right before tip. If you're interested, Discord's the place where you find all of the bets early or the bets late if there's injury news or something breaks. We're projecting games, sides, and totals for every game. And we're also doing player props for just about every game from here on out. There will be a lot of the tournament, or excuse me, there'll be the entire tournament for player props and a lot of the NIT and CBI and Crown. So if you're interested in that, there's no long-term commitments. It is $10 for 7 days and $30 for a month. You can jump in for the entire month with no long-term commitment if you like, or just the first week. If you've done that, thank you for the support. The link is in the description below. Grand Canyon, Maryland. This is a game I did bet already. The spread is 10.5 points in favor of Maryland. A 150 total. No major injuries. For Grand Canyon, you could probably just note Ty and Grant Foster missed about a half dozen games this year. Grand Canyon is 93rd overall. They went 1-2 against the top 100 with a win over Stanford, but lost to Arizona State by 11 and Georgia by 5. So decent showing. They also lost outside the top 100 5 times to 246 UC Davis, 126 Louisiana Tech, 114 Utah Valley, 167 Cal Baptist, and 219 Abilene Christian. Maryland is 12th in the country. They went 4-3 against the top 25, beat Illinois twice, Wisconsin, and Michigan. Their only questionable losses came to Washington and Northwestern, but that was a very early Northwestern appearance. They still had Barnheiser and Leach. Full-strength Northwestern was better than the 45th team in the country. Maryland, 81st in effective height, 73rd in rebounding. Grand Canyon is 101st in effective height, 60th in rebounding. Fairly neutral on paper, but Grand Canyon has, I think, a little bit of room to improve. I don't think it's going to matter. A lot of that is just health. Maryland is playing Derek Queen and Julian Reese inside. Scoring against those two is way easier said than done, even with a Grand Canyon team that has a lot of talent and has a lot of high major talent that is transferred down. Just not really buying that it's going to stick here. Duke Brennan is 6'10". Jacoby Coles is 6'8". Jacoby Coles couldn't get on the floor at TCU for a full-time role. Now he's facing NBA lottery picks and veterans like Julian Reese. And the other thing with Grand Canyon is, like, why are they so bad this year in comparison to last year? They're 93rd overall. Last year, this team was 52nd. They beat St. Mary's to open the tournament. They returned Ty and Grant Foster, Duke Brennan. They also added Jacoby Coles. I just can't really justify their regression this far. And yeah, they've had players miss games. Ty and Grant Foster missed 8. Duke Brennan missed 6. You added Jacoby Coles, and they played 33 games already. Like, what happened in the games where those guys were healthy? I just don't have the answers, and it shows up in their body of work. 162nd effective field goal percentage, 290th from 3. Colin Moore, your best shooter, is at 36%. He only has 91 attempts. Maryland's 5th in total defense, 51st inside with Reese and Queen, 21st defending the perimeter. Grand Canyon's whole offense is basically getting to the rim, and now you have to face that elite rim protection. Like, what happened? Then on the other side, Maryland's 58th in effective field goal percent, 113th, 2-point percent, 26th in 3. And honestly, there's a lot of room for growth inside since Derek Queen has evolved throughout the season as a very young freshman. But I mean, if they're not throwing it into Derek Queen or Julian Reese, Rodney Rice, Selton Miguel, and Jacoby Gillespie are all above 38% from 3. Miguel and Gillespie are above 40%. Grand Canyon does play good defense. This is the best stat they've posted all season. 46th in total lead, 24th inside, 56th defending the perimeter. But man, there's some other edges for Maryland. Grand Canyon cannot handle the ball. They're 284th in turnovers committed. Maryland is 42nd in turnovers forced. I guess if the handicap in the game, if you're favoring Grand Canyon, is just, we need to at least consider what they did in 2023, 2024. If you took those efficiency metrics, the spread would be inside 10.5. But man, we have a 30-game sample from 2025. I don't see a way you can really go back to those data points now. That was a year ago. Both these teams play fast. That doesn't work in Grand Canyon's favor. Maryland's 53rd in pace. Grand Canyon's 13th. I laid the 10.5. We make it outside of this, closer to 12. The only way you get there on the Grand Canyon side is using last year's efficiency metrics. It's just the only way. Next up, Norfolk State takes on Florida. This game has a 28.5 point spread, a 153.5 total. No major injuries in the game. Norfolk State is 180th overall. They're the best 16 seed. Won 4-5 against the top 100. They beat High Point. Lost to Stanford by 7, Grand Canyon by 18, Baylor by 25, Tennessee by 15. Reasonable showings in those games. Other than that, they did lose outside the top 300 a couple times to Morgan State and NC Central. Florida's on an absolute warpath. 6-3 in the top 25, wins over every good team you could possibly imagine. Their worst losses to Georgia, and they should have won that game. If they made a couple more free throws, they would have. And this team, in blowouts, hasn't always run up the score. They beat 195 USF by 15. Again, Norfolk State is 180th. They beat 179 Jacksonville State by 21, beat 193 Southern Illinois by 25. This team does have 3 wins by more than 28 points. Wichita State, who wasn't healthy, North Florida, and Stetson. But the difference between North Florida and Stetson versus Norfolk State is 180th. Those teams are outside the top 260. Anyway, stylistically, first of all, I took 29 with Norfolk. Bought out of it because of the stylistics, but I'm kind of talking myself back in because this team is actually not that bad. In efficiency metrics, it's not just my model too, like Evan Mia, Ken Palm, some of these have this pretty close to 20 points rather than 30. So I think you're going to get some value potentially on the spread with Norfolk. I just don't know if I can do it because of the stylistics. This team cannot shoot. They're a fairly big team, 80th overall, 159th in rebounding, and they try to win with size. And the problem is it's just Florida's 36th in height, 10th in rebounding. Mating, the Norfolk center, who is actually very good. He ranks 84th nationally in block percentage, good rebounder, good at scoring in the rim. He's 6'11", but he's still a mid-major center facing Thomas Haw, Alex Condon, Ruben Chenyulu, Micah Hanlockton. Like, how is he going to score? Norfolk is 299th in three-point percentage. They never shoot threes either. They're one of the lowest three-point rates in the country. So you're going to force everything to the rim against the 4 enormous forwards against Florida. Plus, Florida's 7th at defending the 3. I'm not sure how Norfolk scores in this game. I want to take them, but how are they going to put up points? Unless Florida just takes their foot off the gas, which they very well could. Because on the other end, like, Florida's going to score inside with Condon, Chenyulu, Hanlockton, and Haw. They can also shoot. They're 92nd in three-point percentage. No one has like this blazing high three-point percent, but Walter Clayton, Martin, and Will Richard are all between 36 and 38%, just solid across the board. And Norfolk's 237th in total defense. Their worst metric is on the perimeter, 190th there. Plus, they turn it over all the time. Norfolk is 254th in turnovers committed. I guess Norfolk's best path is trying to slow this game. But, man, I have a real hard time, even with Florida showing a willingness to take their foot off the gas and not blow out bad teams. I don't know if I can do it. We're going to wait and see. There's a chance I end up on Norfolk State again for the second time after I played it, bought out of it because of the stylistics. Just a team that can't shoot threes and only plays at the rim. I don't know if Florida is your best matchup for covering even a 29-point spread, but I might just have to plug my nose and try it out. We'll see. I don't love 16 seeds, but you never know. Troy takes on Kentucky. This game is an 11.5-point spread, 151.5 total. Injuries in the game all come on the Kentucky side. Lamont Butler, Jackson Robinson, Kirk Kriisa. The only one I think that's going to play is Lamont Butler. He is expected back, but in what capacity, we're not sure. Keeps aggravating the shoulder. Troy is 98th in total power rankings. They went 2-4 against the top 100, beat Arkansas State twice. They finished with 3 questionable losses, lost to Merrimack, Texas State, and Louisiana. Louisiana being the worst by a mile. That team is 316th overall. And they got blown out by every top 40 team they faced this year. They lost by 20 points to Houston. They lost 65 to 49 to Arkansas. They lost 82 to 61 to Oregon. Now they're playing Kentucky. Kentucky 16th overall. Somehow, despite the injuries, this team went 8-5 against the top 25. Beat Duke, Gonzaga, Louisville, Florida, Texas A&M, Tennessee twice, Missouri. My God. They also have 5 losses. I mean, it's been streaky. Ohio State, Georgia, Vanderbilt, Arkansas, Texas. Those are all sub-top 35 teams. So, yeah, you got the high-end wins. You have some questionable losses. But what I can say, your worst loss to number 49 Vandy is a hell of a lot better than Troy. And Troy is small. They're 193rd in effective height. Very good on the glass for their size. 32nd in rebounding. Kentucky just much bigger. 41st in effective height. 69th in rebounding. And a lot of this comes from Troy's attack on the offensive glass. They're 5th overall. While Kentucky's 24th in defensive rebounding, they're going to shut the water off here for Troy, who's a smaller team, wins off effort. Shooting-wise, Kentucky 21st in effective field goal, 33rd from 2, 25th from 3. Jackson Robinson, his absence definitely hurts them from 3, but Kobe Bray is shooting 44%. Lamont Butler and Otega Owe have jumped up to 36%. And if you're looking at Troy's defense, their worst metric is their three-point defense. They're 103rd there, 19th inside, 74th overall. And then when Troy has the ball, this team just flat out can't shoot. It's 222nd in effective field goal, 73rd inside. That's a decent metric. 338th from 3. I mean, this is an awful shooting team. You're going to have to score at the rim, which normally I think is a path against Kentucky, who's 49th overall, 289th inside, and 30th in three-point defense. Thomas Dowd I actually like in this conference. Jackson Fields is okay too. But man, a short Troy team playing in the Sun Belt, living on the offensive glass, trying to put back second chance opportunities against Kentucky, who is a little bit weak inside defensively, but still tall, so it's there. I have a hard time with this seeing Troy's path. It's a weird turnover matchup. Troy is 329th in turnovers committed, but Kentucky's only 340th in turnovers forced. Then on the other end, Kentucky 43rd in turnovers committed, Troy's 50th in turnovers forced. Fouls are kind of the same, but a lesser degree. So I'm not sure how much of a factor that's going to be in the matchup. But I played Kentucky minus the 10.5. We made it closer to 12. And I think, honestly, if Lamont Butler plays at full strength, hopefully we get a good look at him soon. This could be closer to like a minus 13 or 14 in this game with Troy's not inability to score, but it's not fantastic. They also don't play super slow. They're 239th in pace. Maybe they'll try to slow it down. But Kentucky forces you to run. Don't love that stylistic in this game. We played at 10.5 with Kentucky. New Mexico, Marquette. 4-point spread in favor of Marquette. 153 total, no major injuries. New Mexico is 41st overall. They're 5-4 against the top 50. Beat UCLA, VCU, Colorado State twice, in Boise. At least there's 2 wins in there that are outside the conference. They have 2 losses outside the top 100, lost the rivalry to New Mexico State. And then they dropped the game to San Jose, which is not great. Marquette is 28th overall. They went 3-4 against the top 25, beating Maryland, Purdue, and Wisconsin. All of those seem like ages ago now at this point. They lost to Dayton at 74, Xavier, UConn twice, Creighton, Villanova, got swept by St. John's 3 times. A lot of that coming of late, and that's it. Marquette has been trending in the wrong direction. But this is a weird matchup overall. They're 2 guard-dominant teams. Marquette is 78th in effective height, but 241st in rebounding. New Mexico's 34th in effective height, but 57th in rebounding. They do have a solid edge on the glass here. I like Nelly Jr. Joseph inside. Marquette does have Ben Gold at 6'11". He just doesn't rebound very well. A lot of Marquette's rebounding is driven by guards, so the edge is on the glass for New Mexico. But I'm not sure there's much else. Marquette is 115th in effective field goal percent, 49th inside, 237th in three-point defense. Cam Jones and Joplin both have over 200 three-point attempts. Neither is above 31%. It's not good. Their less frequent shooters, Ben Gold, Chase Ross, and Stevie Mitchell, are all between 36 and 37. I don't know if this would persist over a larger sample, but it's at least interesting. Your 2 worst shooters on paper this year. I know that shouldn't be the case. These guys were awesome last year. But again, last year you had Oso Ighodaro and Tyler Kolek to take the pressure off. Now these guys are up the scouting report and not capable of shooting above, frankly, a below average mark. Defensively, New Mexico is 16th overall. A lot of that turnover driven because they're 180th defending the three. What wins out? Marquette, I would argue they're due for positive regression from three. We'll see. Marquette takes a ton of threes. They're 39th in the country at three-point rate. So how their underachieving unit does against this poor three-point New Mexico defense is going to go a long way to determining the matchup. On the other side, New Mexico is 176th at effective field goal percent, 169th from two, 160th from three. This team is an awful shot chart. They take a lot of long-range twos. I don't know why, because if Donovan Dent took like 2 steps back, maybe they would win more games and score more points because he's a 41% three-point shooter. But he has 64 attempts. I mean, they try to get to the rim. They take a bunch of long twos. Marquette is good on defense. 29th in total D, 195th inside. That's not great. 65th defending the three. On paper, it's a good matchup for New Mexico. They are better at scoring inside. I still have a lot of questions with that team. Both teams force a lot of turnovers, but neither team turns it over much. That is a little bit in favor of Marquette. I think you can honestly play the anti-Mountain West narrative. New Mexico scares me a little with the non-con wins over UCLA and VCU. But if you're forcing me to pick a side, it's going to be Marquette based on that. We make it inside that number. I just am going basically for a macro fade on this. I likely will not play the game because mathematically we do show some value in New Mexico. But man, there are stylistics in favor of Marquette still. Not a fan of the Mountain West. Next up, Akron takes on Arizona. This game is going to be just pure pace. Akron, 14.5-point underdog, 167 total. That's because Akron's 15th in pace and Arizona is 54th. I'll just say this right off the bat. If your goal is running against Arizona, good luck. Akron is 0-3 against the top 100. Their best win came against South Alabama. Lost to Arkansas State by 5 points in the crossover against the Sun Belt. They also lost to St. Mary's and Yale by double digits. Other losses, Milwaukee, Princeton, and Ohio, somewhat concerning because Arizona's 14th overall. They're 5-8 against the top 25 with 2 wins over Texas Tech, Kansas, BYU, and Iowa State. We poked a hole in the Iowa State one because of the Caleb Love half-court shot, but they still won. It is what it is. And I guess one of the Texas Tech games, they didn't have Darion Williams or Chance McMillian, so that's worth noting too. Arizona lost outside the top 50 twice, Kansas State and West Virginia. No, not too much shame there. They're a little streaky, but it is what it is. Here's where things go awry for Akron. 364th in effective height. Yes, you heard me. 364. That is dead last, the shortest lineup in the country, adjusted for minutes. Number 1 shortest lineup. Somehow they're still 61st in effective rebounding. I think that's largely because James Okonkwo, who's a high major transfer, he went to West Virginia, North Carolina. He's a top 20 rebounder. He's just not supposed to play the 5. Arizona's 14th in rebounding, 131st in height. And honestly, they keep messing with their lineup. When they actually play Carter Bryant and Visar, who's a 7-footer, they did that last game. This team is taller and better on the glass than 14th. So, I mean, that's in their bag. I don't know how much those guys are going to play because sometimes he randomly picks out Trey Townsend and decides to give him 25 minutes. I'm not a coach for a reason. I mean, there's a lot of stylistics I don't understand. Perhaps there's some advantage to that, but it is hard to see it when you watch the game. Arizona's 82nd in effective field goal. The only reason that's driven down is because they're 237th from 3 off Caleb Love's atrocious shooting, 32% on 266 attempts. I mean, they have 3-point shooters. Anthony Dell'Orso shoots 40%, but he barely plays. So, I mean, Caleb Love really drives down the effective numbers. If you just reel him in a little bit, I mean, they should smash Akron, who's 173 on defense, 168th inside, just like pound the ball inside via this height mismatch, man. And Arizona should run away with this. Otherwise, Akron, they shoot the ball well. They shoot a ton of threes. Multiple players can do it. Tavari Johnson, 40%. Sharon Young, 41.5. Bowen Hardman, 39. Seth Wilson, 37. Shama Scott, 38. But Arizona's 31st in total defense. Better at defending the rim, I'll give them that. 162nd defending the 3. I still think the length here is going to frustrate Akron, even at guard. That Arizona hasn't defended the 3 well this year. You just don't face a lot of teams this short. And I don't know if running with Arizona and getting cooked in transitions where you want to play either. I laid the 14.5 with the Wildcats in this game over Akron. I think this one has a chance to get ugly. with Akron basically playing the style of game that Arizona wants. And Akron can't really stand, I think, through a full 40 minutes. Oklahoma, UConn. This game has a 4-point spread in favor of UConn, a 147 total. Only injured in the game is Sam Goodwin. Oklahoma's 38th overall. UConn's 35th. Oklahoma went 4-9 against the top 25. Beat Arizona, Louisville, Michigan, and Missouri. Their only losses outside the top 40 came to Texas, and then they dropped a road game to LSU. Can't be doing that. But UConn, they have a 1-2 record against the top 25. Beat Gonzaga. Lost outside the top 55 times. Memphis, Colorado, Dayton, Nova, and Seton Hall at 206. My goodness. UConn is 92nd in effective height, 13th in rebounding. This is one of their bigger advantages because Oklahoma is not super big. They're 145th in effective height, 259th in rebounding. Will give UConn the edge on the glass. Shooting-wise, I don't know who has the advantage. I would lean Oklahoma. UConn is 27th in effective field goal, 16th inside, 88th from three. Most of that shooting comes from just solo ball, being a 42% shooter. Oklahoma's 80th in total defense, but 322nd inside. They are very good at defending the three. UConn is 90th in three-point rate, so they're taking a lot of threes. That doesn't match up well with Oklahoma on paper, but Dan Hurley is a good coach, as he'll tell you. He knows that Oklahoma is weak inside. And UConn does have the bodies to take advantage of this with McNeely and Caravan when he's not standing on the three-point line, hucking threes. They could take this just inside. Scoring is a major mismatch. But on the other side, Oklahoma has mismatches in their favor. 39th in effective field goal, 52nd in two-point percent, 34th in three-point. Duke Miles, Bryson Goodine, both hitting over 43% of their threes. Jalen Moore is not far behind at 39%. UConn has like the same profile as Oklahoma on defense, except their weakness is from three. Really strong inside, 92nd overall, 257 defending the three. Oklahoma has the patch of shooting right over the top of this. Both teams really struggle with turnovers, but Oklahoma forces way more. They outrank UConn in turnovers forced, 111 to 289. Both teams also get in foul trouble, but Oklahoma forces more fouls. Oklahoma also plays the deeper rotation. They're 89th in bench minutes. I also think you're getting a huge SEC discount in this spot. What has UConn done well this year? They have one good win at Gonzaga, or against Gonzaga. Their other wins of note are in conference. Like, are you impressed with Marquette wins? Are you impressed with, I would be impressed with St. John win. They don't have it, though. Are you impressed with Villanova wins? No, I'm not. They lost to Nova, too. They lost to Seton Hall. They lost to Memphis. They lost to Colorado. They lost to Dayton. Not interested in UConn. I played a +5 with Oklahoma. We make this closer to like a -2. This is a major SEC discount we're getting here. Oklahoma's flawed. I don't think they're making a run in the tournament. I could see them even losing this game by the spread because of their flaws. But UConn's just as flawed. I don't think you can just go out here betting on Dan Hurley, who a lot of people will say, oh, this team has covered every game in the tournament the last 2 years. That is true. This is a different team. And the teams before the two that covered every game, Dan Hurley had 2 quick exits in the tournament as well. Those were also different teams. They're different teams every year. We'll take Oklahoma, and we will move on. Bryant takes on Michigan State. My favorite 15-seed Bryant. As Steve Boynton said, the island of misfit Power 5 toys, Power 4 toys, high major toys. It's a good one, Steve. They're a 17.5-point underdog to Michigan State, a 152 total, no major injuries. Bryant is 149th overall. They went 1-5 against the top 200, beating 187 Drexel. Got blown out in both top 100 matchups against St. John's and Grand Canyon. Lost 6 times outside the top 200 to Siena, Stonehill, Fordham, Brown, Albany, Vermont. This is just a low-level league. Michigan State went 7-2 against the top 25. Illinois twice, Purdue, Michigan twice, Maryland, Wisconsin. 3 losses outside the top 40 for them. Memphis, USC, and Indiana. Michigan State 21st in effective height, 3rd in rebounding. Bryant is 104th in effective height, 50th in rebounding. They don't have a single starter shorter than 6'6". A lot of high major talent here as well. Rafael Pinzon from St. John's. Earl Timberlake went to Miami and Memphis. Barry Evans is from St. Bonaventure. They still don't have a great body of work, resume-wise, like actual wins on paper for having these players. Michigan State just being so tall and so effective on the glass, even being tall, high major transfers, I don't think you're getting it done against Sparty. Michigan State, 151 in effective field goal, 85th inside, 325th from 3. Shooting metrics have all been going way up since they made the lineup change, bringing Jace Richardson into the starting lineup. He's a 41% three-point shooter. He'll just do that. He's a lottery pick, man. Bryant's 152nd in total defense, 44th inside, 83rd defending the three. It's a good mid-major defense, low-major defense, if you will. And Michigan State playing in the right direction. I still think they're scoring. Bryant, 166th in effective field goal, 155th inside, 195th from three. Pinzon and Evans both hit over 38% of their threes, but Michigan State is 6th in total defense, 105th inside, 2nd defending the three. It's like, how are you scoring here? Teams are identical in turnover and foul margins, so you're really relying on the gaps in scheduling and the level of these conferences if you're a Michigan State backer. We make this pretty close to the spread, like right around 17.5. It's definitely not a play by any means, but if you force me to take a side, it is going to be Sparty with the gap in talent we see between these teams. I'm not sure how Bryant's really going to score in this game. They're going to get cooked on the glass. The shots Michigan State does miss, they're going to have so many second chance opportunities. It's Sparty or read this pass, likely to be a pass. The biggest pretzel game of the first round for me, other than maybe North Carolina and Ole Miss, is this game. Liberty and Oregon. No major injuries. Isaiah Einen went out really early for Liberty as a Minnesota transfer. It's a 7-point spread in favor of Oregon at 139.5 total. I just left the model up without any adjustments on the screen below. You can see we make this inside the 7 points. I'm just not sure if I can do it. Liberty is 62nd in power rankings. They went 2-0 against the top 100, beat Kansas State and McNeese. They lost twice outside the top 150, though, to Western Kentucky and UTEP. Oregon is 31st overall, 4-5 against the top 25. Beat A&M, Bama, Wisconsin, and Maryland. Lost to Minnesota and Nebraska, so that's a concern. But the real advantage here is Oregon's 20th in effective height, 110th in rebounding. Liberty is small. They're 283rd in effective height, 298th in rebounding. This is a massive edge for 7-foot-tall Nate Biddle inside. Liberty has two guards that stand at 5'10 and 5'11, Colin Porter and Caden Matheny. On that individually, I still think most of the size is coming from Biddle and Kwame Evans inside. You look at the guards for Oregon. Jackson Shellstad is 6 feet tall. Bartholomew is 6'1". It's not like at the guard position, Oregon is dwarfing over Porter and Matheny. So I don't know. I still think you got to attack the inside with Biddle if you're Oregon. They're 107th in effective field goal, 106th in two-point percent, 168th from three. So they're better on the inside regardless. Liberty is 40th in total defense, 61st inside, 2nd defending the three. It's Conference USA. It's not a good conference, but at the end of the day, your best path is Nate Biddle. You just got to pound it inside to him. But Liberty should have some advantages too offensively. They're going to have to shoot the ball over the top, which is easier said than done. But they're 3rd in effective field goal, 13th in two-point percent, 5th in three-point percent. They also shoot the 19th most threes in the country. Colin Porter's at 44%. Caden Matheny's at 39%. Taylon Peters at 47%. You got a lot of shooters. Oregon's 37th in total D, 139th inside, 62nd defending the perimeter. So it's still not a good matchup for Liberty. Neither team forces turnovers or get in trouble. But what wins in this? Is it Liberty's three-point shooting or Oregon scoring inside? Mathematically, we have to lean Liberty. I'm having some pause in the game based on the level of competition, and Biddle just should be able to cook inside. There's still a pretty good chance to end up on Liberty here. It's just too many points mathematically for this to make a lot of sense. Right on cue. We noted it. The second game that puts me in a mental pretzel. North Carolina takes on Ole Miss. North Carolina won their play-in game against San Diego State, basically by murder. They're now a 2-point favorite over Ole Miss in a game with a 155 total. No major injuries in the game. I'm sure Matt Morrell will pop up on the SEC injury report as he does weekly and play through it. North Carolina has climbed all the way to 30th in power rankings. They were at 34th before the San Diego State game. Now they've jumped even higher. They're still 0-10 against the top 25. They have 2 top 50 wins all year. San Diego State comes in at 51 now. They beat SMU and they beat UCLA. They have 3 losses outside the top 50 to 82 Stanford, 71 Wake Forest, 61 Pitt. And again, they just murdered San Diego State, but that's the number 53 team in the country. You still didn't even earn a 3rd top 50 win by doing that. Ole Miss is 26th overall. They're 5-7 against the top 25. Beat BYU, Louisville, Alabama, Kentucky, Tennessee. They've only lost outside the top 40 twice, and that was to number 48 Vanderbilt and 50 Memphis. Stylistics, before we get to the recent play stuff, that is a huge factor in this game. North Carolina is 205th in effective height, 82nd in rebounding. Ole Miss is 270th in effective height, 322nd in rebounding. Yes, even North Carolina has an advantage on the glass in this game, despite not being tall. And there's room for growth with their metrics now that Jalen Withers at 6'9" and 6 foot Van Allen Lubin are playing more. They've been better on the glass. So it's still mostly neutral, just a slight edge North Carolina's direction. Honestly, this is probably good for Ole Miss because where they've really gotten cooked is against these elite big teams, which North Carolina still is not. Jalen Withers and Van Allen Lubin are still transfer failures from previous programs, just have been a little hot recently for this team. But still, you're playing a dwarfish Ole Miss team. And like the shooting for this North Carolina team is still very good, and it's only gotten better. 53rd in effective field goal, 49th from 2, 92nd from 3. They've jumped to 23rd in three-point percent since January 1st. Ian Jackson, Drake Powell, Jalen Withers, and RJ Davis are all shooting at least 36%. Davis is up to 37.5% in conference. We obviously saw him flamethrower against Duke, especially in the second matchup. Ole Miss is 32nd in total defense, 111th defending the three, 210th inside. I'm still banking on Jalen Withers and Van Allen Lubin being the two least efficient players that are generally going to be on the floor for this team. I know they've played better. We just have seen these players so often. And I'll just get right to it. Now that we've seen North Carolina, go and win 10 of their last 12 or whatever it is, it's something close to that now at this point. People still, I think, are giving them too much credit for beating the sub 100 teams in the ACC. Now, they have played competitively against the better teams. That's worth noting too. But man, I mean, the 50-ish win against San Diego State is the most important thing on the resume for me. They beat Wake Forest by 9. Otherwise, they're playing Notre Dame, Virginia Tech, Miami, Florida State, Virginia, NC State, Syracuse. There's one top 100 team in there. In the span we're talking about, they played close against Duke in the game where they didn't have Flagg and Malik Brown. They got murdered in the second half by Duke in the second game, demolished in the first game. They were losing by 30 before Duke put in their bench players, and they got bodied by Clemson by 20 points. And prior to that, they had losses in the latter half of January to 3 teams outside the top 100. So, I get that they're playing well recently. It's all against bad teams. How much do we really factor that? The thing is, and why I'm not just like slamming the Ole Miss position, is there's some Ole Miss recent play that we need to talk about too. This team, Ole Miss, is 158th in effective field goal percent, 181st in 2-point percent, 160th from 3. However, North Carolina is trending up against horrible teams. Ole Miss is trending down, down, down. They're down to 215th in 3-point percent since January 1st. And that's with having Padula and Murray shooting over 38% from 3. It's Morrell and Drake Davis, complete black holes offensively on this team right now. And Morrell's hurt, playing through it. So it is what it is. North Carolina's decent on defense. They're 65th in total D, 108th inside, 162nd from 3. They have gotten better defending the 3 recently. They're 67th since January 1st. But I guess if I'm trying to explain away Ole Miss's failures and recent lapses, this team is in the SEC. Like for reference, we just went through North Carolina's teams, the best team they played outside of Duke in that span being number 53, San Diego State. Here's who Ole Miss has played. They just played number 4 Auburn, number 40 Arkansas, number 2 Florida, number 5 Tennessee, number 38 Oklahoma, number 4 Auburn, number 48 Vandy, 33 Mississippi State, 69 South Carolina, 89 LSU, 16 Kentucky, 4 Auburn, 44 Texas, 15 Missouri, 17 Texas A&M. Outside of the Duke game, North Carolina hasn't even sniffed an opponent of this caliber since all the way back in the beginning part of February. Again, I don't have the answer to this. It's just a question worth asking. I don't know how much either of these trends in the right and wrong direction make sense. Neither team turns the ball over much in this game. Ole Miss does get in a lot more foul trouble, but North Carolina doesn't generate any. I mean, just mathematically, based on the entire body of work throughout the season, we make Ole Miss favored by 0.02 points. You can get them at +2. I had to play this mathematically. I kind of wish I hadn't because I think you might get a +2.5 or +3. But man, I just can't ignore how bad North Carolina was in the beginning of the year. We'll see. I'll be out on an island with this as I have been kind of with North Carolina recently, except against Duke, who smashes them except for the last game without Flagg and Brown. Anyway, we'll side with Ole Miss and see where this goes. Don't feel good about it based on recent play, but it is what it is. Speaking of, Mount St. Mary's takes on Duke after Mount St. Mary's victory over American, where Matt Rogers got hurt immediately. There's not too much to say on the stylistics in this game. For Mount St. Mary's, Carmelo Pacheco, their best shooters, out. Terrell Art is out. Cooper Flagg may play in this game for a brief cameo appearance. I don't know about Malik Brown. Two major injuries for Duke down the road that aren't impactful for this game. Mount St. Mary's is 249th overall. They went 3-3 against the top 200. Duke has maybe the second best resume in the country behind Auburn. They're the number one power-rated team in the country. They're the tallest team in the country. They're the sixth best rebounding team in the country. They're basically top 5 in every efficiency metric on offense and defense, with the biggest concern being a 35th ranked three-point defense that I think you could maybe argue is a lot better based on their length, which Mount St. Mary's doesn't have. Mount St. Mary's is 296th in offensive efficiency, 217th on defense. I mean, this is just a bloodbath extraordinaire. The real question is what's happened in blowouts. Mount St. Mary's has really only played 2 good teams this year. I mean, like really good. Maryland, they lost by 44. Georgetown, they lost by 28. Duke has beat the absolute snot out of a ton of teams this year. They beat Maine by 34, Army by 42, Wofford by 49, Seattle by 22, Incarnate Word by 26. And those are just the bad teams. The funny thing about Duke is you can also look at the ACC and see what they did against a lot of those teams, and you're also seeing 40-point wins just routinely. I mean, this team beat Wake Forest by 33 points, beat Florida State by 35, beat Miami by 37, beat Illinois. I mean, my goodness, beat Illinois by 43 points, beat Virginia by 38 points, Stanford by 36 points. I mean, I might just out of principle have to take this. They're just an absolute covering machine, even when they're 20-point favorites. And now, we're not playing 90th ranked Florida State today. We're playing 265th or 260th Mount St. Mary's. And just like look at the Duke roster. Here are the guys you're bringing off the bench, excluding, like Proctor, or what's his name? Hubbard, the really small walk-on. Like when you go to your bench, you're going to Caleb Foster. You're going to Isaiah Evans. You're going to Mason Gillis. You're going to Patrick Nongba. You're going to Denver Harris, who's an elite recruit and plays like 2 minutes a game, if he even plays. It's just like your talent gap is so wide, and we've seen it. It's not something that's new and unexpected. I'm probably going to lay it with Duke in this game. I don't know where the line's going to go. I might just take this up to tip, see where it goes. Last game. Also, it's the last game. I haven't said this. If you or somebody who knows a gambling problem, please call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. You must be 21 or older to play. Xavier takes on Illinois. Xavier knocked off Texas last night. They're now a 3.5-point underdog to the Illini in a 159 total game. Illinois 20th overall. They beat Wisconsin, Missouri, Michigan, and Purdue on their way to a 4-8 record against the top 25. They also lost twice outside the top 50 to USC and Nebraska. You can poke a lot of holes in the Illinois resume if you want, and a lot of them work in their favor. This team has battered both injury and illness for like the entire season. Ivasic has missed plenty of time and played limited through plenty of time as well. Xavier's 41st overall. They are 0-3 against the top 25. Best win is against Marquette at 28. 4 losses outside the top 50 to TCU, Cincinnati, Georgetown, Nova. None of those games were games that Fremantle missed either. People will bring up he missed 3 games. It was none of those games. And the Texas game wasn't pretty either. I mean, this team did have to rally back from a pretty significant deficit. They got the win. That is well-deserved. It's just a little concerning to me that it wasn't always pretty during the whole time. And Illinois is better than Texas. Stylistically, Xavier is 114th in effective height, 129th in rebounding. On the other side, this Illinois team, they come in 15th in effective height, 7th in rebounding. This is an advantage for Illinois. You do have Fremantle inside for Xavier. He's 6'9". When he fouls, you're in trouble. I thought like he was on the bench for Xavier against the Texas team they played in the play-in game because he had 4 fouls with 7-ish minutes left. And honestly, I'm watching the game. I think they might be cooked because of that. Luckily, they got a lot of play from other individuals that stepped up in his absence while he was on the bench. Because like when you pull him off the floor, you're really lacking size. You either play smaller or you go to John Hughley if you can find him at the concession stand. And when you're playing Illinois, you got to contend with Ivasic at 7'1". Illinois has 6 players in their rotation at least 6'6". Morris Johnson, 6'9". Hummerkaus, 6'9". They get a ton of size. They don't always use it well, and on that, 105th in effective field goal. They're definitely good at scoring around the rim, 16th there, but they're 316th in three-point percent. And the real problem with the Illinois offense is they're 30th in three-point attempts. That's a rate stat, so three-point rate adjusted for how fast you're playing. That has dropped to 55th since February 1st, but it should drop to 355th with the way they shoot the ball. They don't have any good three-point shooters. Xavier's 38th in total defense, 157th inside, 190th from three. They'll absolutely let you score anywhere you want. My real question is just like, can we get some more shots at the rim, please? On the other side, Xavier can also really shoot the ball. Or I guess conversely, Xavier can really shoot the ball. 57th in effective field goal. They're weaker around the rim, 165, but 6th in three-point percent. Ryan Conwell, Dante Maddox, Marcus Foster all hitting at least 38%. Conwell's an absolute flamethrower from three. And the defense for Illinois is at least somewhat concerning from the perimeter. They're elite inside, rim protection 17th overall, 141st at defending the three. It's a direct path for Xavier to shoot the ball well. Neither team turns it over often, but Xavier outranks Illinois 139 to 359 in turnovers forced, which is weird. Fouls don't project to be a major factor in the game. Illinois is a lot deeper. And we make this pretty efficient in terms of the spread. I'm toying with an over in the game. And I realized I forgot to change the Ole Miss on the bottom. So excuse me for that. I'm way too far in this video to record moving back and adjusting this. Actually, you know what? We can just change it on the fly. I'll take this off the screen and adjust it live on the show so people don't absolutely roast me in the comments. But what I was going to say is we lean Illinois at the 3.5 mark if you can find it. A lot of these are 4. So there we go. We're back in. This is my desktop. It's not going to look pretty, but I did this at 4 a.m. I apologize. Thankfully, it was the last game and not the game right to top off the show. Or so, the midpoint would have been the worst. Would have had to re-record the whole video, but we got here. It's not going to look great. Welcome to my Canvas settings. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. We'll be back with the second round games coming up on Saturday and Sunday. Until then, you guys have a good day. Good luck. Enjoy the best time of year. We'll see you again soon.